Serious, detectives, police officers of Reddit, what case did you not care to find the answer? Why? I was a corrections officer and we worked with the police on an almost daily basis. We'd get to chatting and I found, in my experience, cops hated car chases. They hated domestic disputes, but most of all, they hated suicides. I don't think I know a cop who doesn't have a suicide story where they can actually tell the whole thing. Being a cop and a prison CO puts you into contact with some of the lowest forms of human life. People for whom you couldn't shed a tear. But it's the innocent people, the victims of car accidents, suicides and families of victims that really bother us. As a CO, I had a little old lady who take a 4-hour bus ride to come to the prison to speak with her nephew. He was a real piece of shit. But she'd knit him sweaters. Show him the sweaters and say, "I'll put this in the drawer for when you get out." She'd bring him food, which he could eat, and they'd talk and one of the COs would drive her back to the bus station. She broke my heart. It's always the people left behind or those suffering that really get to us. Child porn is the worst in general. It's one of those things where you want the bad guy to go away, but you really don't care to find the evidence. A lady wanted us to come out and investigate because she believes while she was out, 2 people broke into her home and shit in her toilet. Just one of them though. The other was acting as a lookout. Didn't really delve into that one. Large city police officer here. Every day there are jobs we get that we don't really care about. Most people would be surprised if we said we found stolen cars and returned them to the owner without much investigation afterwards. Most retail thefts in the city are reported and receive no further investigation. If all the store has is a short video of a dude wearing a hoodie walking out a store with $40 worth of merchandise, there's not going to be much investigating. A retail theft will never be a big city priority. Vandalism. Unless there is a video of it. We personally witness it. Or we get a confession we can't arrest. We just take the report and refer them elsewhere. Sadly, in so many cases, the shooting victim won't tell you at what location he was shot, let alone the circumstances surrounding the shooting. The first part of the investigation often involves disproving the victim's account. Guy says he was shot on 5th Street and walked to the hospital. But you have reports of sounds of gunshots on 15th Street and have video of him being dropped off in an Impala. Many times it's a case of retribution or neighborhood beefs, where an accurate narrative by the victim would require the backstory that he shot the suspect's friend the week before. It's disheartening when the main initial thrust of the shooting investigation is to figure out where it happened and why. And then the victim goes AWOL and provided a bad address and phone number. So then you need to hunt him down to convince him to tell you what really happened. This all takes hours and hours away from investigating lesser crimes where the victims are honest and forthcoming. Edit. If you're thinking if he doesn't care, then why should we? Yeah. We often think that way. But ultimately there's a guy out there shooting people we need to find and get off the street. Ex-cop. NSW, Australia. 7 years. I really never wanted to find the answer to 2 particular murders in my area. 2 known sexual offenders were killed in the space of 8 weeks. One was a rock spider, pedophile. The other used to drug women. The 2 issues were unrelated. Only one of the alleged offenders was caught, also a scumbag 1%. He was released after a week due to lack of evidence. I know it's bad to wish death on people, but these 2 blokes were just rancid. As a cop it was my job to find the offenders, but as a human I had no interest in solving the issue at all. Luckily I was never in charge of the investigations. Edit. Definition added for rock spider. Last week a woman called 911 to report that the wind was loud and making too much noise. She wanted us to find out why it was so loud and if we could turn down the volume of the wind. Added to better suit the post. We are often, if not always, dispatched to rescue calls depending on the severity type. Due to the fact that we are closer than FD. Responded to a 4-year-old who was unconscious and vomiting. Without getting into the details, it didn't take long after my arrival to realize it was a cover-up. My partner and I already knew where this incident was headed. But you keep your head down and try and do the job without getting emotional. Mother and father were both adamantly lying that the child had just eaten some junk food and had gone to sleep before he started vomiting. Without getting into the details, investigation revealed that the father was mad at the child for eating some junk food. So he grabbed the child by the ankles and swung him around the house into furniture all over the home, nearly killing him. It's one of those cases that you don't want to investigate, because you know ahead of time what the outcome is going to be, how bad it's going to get. A hooker with a nasty attitude screamed at me for 15 minutes about how a check one of her less scrupulous clients had given her had bounced, considering she didn't know who he was or where we could find him. And we weren't about to set up 24/7 surveillance to identify her John. We told her in no certain terms to next time, take cash. I heard once that most thieves will rely on the fact that the general populace believes that somebody else will intervene. From shoplifting to kidnapping, most people who witness a crime will hope somebody else saw it and did something. Personally, I rely on a thief's paranoia that I'm the dude who did. I saw it. I said something. And I will remember. So go ahead and make a scene, dude. I might lose my job, but you stand a chance at losing a little bit more. I'll have plenty of other jobs, but you will only have so many chances. That being said, I once helped these store detectives stop a guy who, once they got him to the back office, had stolen 2 quarts of motor oil and some baby formula. He broke down crying, saying he had a job interview the following Monday and his baby was hungry, and he had to make that interview come hell or high water. We gathered in a room without him and discussed it. Decided to let him go. I think my supervisor even bought the stuff for him. Or maybe I just want to remember it that way. Had a guy report he had been kidnapped and drugged against his will. He had managed to escape and had run across town to evade his captors. I was able to rendezvous with him and bring him back to the station. He told me this grand story about being taken across the county and by people he thought were his family, no less. When I asked him their names and where he had been held, he got all sheepish and said he didn't want to make enemies and just wanted to go home. I started driving him towards his home and dropped him off at a gas station just outside my jurisdiction. Sorry, neighboring detachment. He's your problem now. The case of why I got fired. A co-worker of mine had done something wrong. Nothing horrible, but a mere stupid mistake. I was there at the time, but I did not care. I told him to pay better attention next time and be done with it. But my superiors did not agree. They wanted him gone. So they ordered me to make the facts worse than they actually were. I was supposed to lie for them. I refused on the spot, and they told me that can't harm my career. I said I did not care, and that officers from the Royal Army should not behave in such a way. Before I knew it, they found someone else that lied about what he did and about what I did. As we had no way of disproving what they told people we did, we both got fired without honors. It was done publicly, stripped of rank and honors. We both laughed and walked away. Said this is not the kind of people we wanted to work for in the first place, and that they could go and FCK themselves. We were both military police officers. I got a new job shortly after that and made almost twice the money I did there. Best decision of my life. And I have no regrets for not putting in a false statement. So I decided not to press charges, because we had no way of proving we did not do the things they claimed we did. Not one case or anything, but I would pay a lot of money to get rid of domestic violence if I could, and if I had a lot of money. Some of my worst memories of my time as an officer have to do with those calls. Edit. Deleted a duplicate word. If it wasn't for the NSW police, Australia, my little boy and I probably wouldn't be alive today. They did, and continue to do, the best they could saving us from my ex. 2 years later, still living in fear, but we are safer now because of them. Much respect. I hate SIDS. I have had to deal with a few of those in my time as an MP. Car chases are awesome. The first time After that you realize how effing stupid they are. Edit. Also, one time I had to pick up a soldier who had shot his team leader and a friend in Iraq, Afghanistan. It was about a 10-minute drive from where I picked him up. I didn't say anything. I felt if I did I would get too emotional towards him on his actions. So I just kept my mouth shut. Edit. Also, one time I had to pick up a soldier who had shot his team leader and a friend in Iraq, Afghanistan. It was about a 10-minute drive from where I picked him up. I didn't say anything. I felt if I did I would get too emotional towards him on his actions. So I just kept my mouth shut. My uncle was a cop in Florida in the 90s. They were finding dead kids in by the interstate for maybe 5 years or so before my uncle retired. No suspects. Kids abducted within 100 miles or so. At the peak, it'd be one body every 2 months. But usually they found to a year. Never been solved. After he retired, evidence photos in some of those cases got destroyed in a flood. For like 10 years after Uncle's retirement, his department would call him when a similar case came through so he'd reproduce the details for them. He stopped responding to those requests at some point. Said he wants to live the rest of his life without seeing another dead child. One lazy Sunday afternoon duty in North London, I got a call to a male going berserk in a residential house. As soon as I entered the house, having been let in by his girlfriend, this chap kicked off. He flew at me and I was forced to use my truncheon to quieten him down. As he lay on the floor. Though I know you. Full stop. He was a member of a well-known 70s English pop group. Hey, this is a first, I thought. Full stop. He then got up and tried to strangle me, and for several minutes, it seemed a lifetime, I was fighting for my life. Luckily the cavalry came in time, and before he knew it, he was covered in police. The London ambulance service arrived and a medical option was given. He's effing mad and someone had the bright idea to restrain him in a spinal restraint. He was put in said restraint and seeing him burst the leather straps was quite disconcerting. Hey ho. We all jumped on him again. Ended all right in the end. It was a very heavy LSD trip that went wrong. He was very apologetic when he came out of it. Not the cop, but the guy they didn't want to find. In 1983 stopped a guy that was beating a 6-year-old. I beat him pretty bad and got arrested when the cops got there. Several witnesses came forward and gave statements and the cops ran a warrants and warrants check and found he had a conviction for crimes against children. Still don't know what that is, and a restraining order to stay away from children. The sergeant made me a deal on the scene. They would not charge me with aggravated assault if I left, forgot they had me in custody. EMT here. I once responded to a call where a man and his preteen daughter were shot randomly in their own yard. The daughter had a minor flesh wound but the man was shot in the head. He was, surprisingly, still alive, unconscious but still breathing by himself and still had a pulse. We futilely did everything we could as far as pre-hospital medicine goes, but we got him to the hospital alive. My colleague later brought him from the hospital. We brought him to the trauma center about 30 minutes away. Still alive but still super unstable. I'd like to think he lived, but that's pretty unlikely, and even if he did, he probably wouldn't really be alive. Jesus. I take a County Leo exam in a week. After reading some of these stories, part of me hopes I wake up with explosive diarrhea that morning and can't make it. Trust me. My uncle and grandfather were officers and the stories of helping people and families in need far outweigh the bad. They would take us every Christmas to hand out gifts to the poor children along with the EMTs and the FD, and the sheer joy on the faces of the children made up for having to wake up early. If you aren't willing to go above and beyond to make your town a better place, to help those in need, and to bring to justice those who deserve it, you might want to reconsider. If you are, then good luck and Godspeed. This country needs more good people in the force. Don't be scared by the horror stories. It's all just part of the job. Yeah. There's a department that does things with the calls. Yes. We have had that problem here, but in every room we have had 3 supervisors and a manger for a while now to make sure things like that don't happen. Someone hung up on a PD dispatch and we got a call back with them screaming at us about fines and to never do that again. That person learned their lesson. Not one case or anything. But I would pay a lot of money to get rid of domestic violence if I could, and if I had a lot of money. Some of my worst memories of my time as an officer have to do with those calls. Edit. Deleted a duplicate word. Other side of the coin. My house was robbed of something like $5,000 worth of stuff while I was at work. Lived in a shitty part of town so cops patrolled on foot. Substation literally at the other end of my block. Even 2 houses down from a traffic camera. No one saw anything. The detectives took a list of everything. Said they would look into it but they never even came to my house. I had to go to them. I even found fingerprints on the outside of the window they climbed into to unlock my front door that they never came out to collect or check out. I didn't have renter's insurance and I got FK'd for the whole thing. They even kicked the shitty out of my cat. I don't think I'll even call the cops if I ever need them again. I'm not a cop. But I do investigate and enforce against environmental violations. 99% of the time I deal with companies who have environmental staff or attorneys that can address issues and work with us to resolve them. They have deep pockets. And they know they screwed up. Every once in a while though, I get something a little different. A few months back, I got a call from one of our actual cops who had gotten a complaint. Turns out a couple of Amish guys had decided to open a sawmill. They got a hold of an old steel tank. Had someone weld a chimney on it and torch a hole for a door. They used it to burn all of their wood scraps, branches, bark, waste pieces etc. Unfortunately, the property they were doing it on was across the street from some jerk who complained. So I had to investigate. I dragged my feet for a while because I knew that once I found a violation, operating an unpermitted emission source, I would have to act on it. But I can't sit on things forever so I had to go out there. We explained everything to the gentlemen, who were confused but very nice about the whole situation. Unfortunately our legal folks were fine with waiving any penalties so long as they stopped doing what they were doing. I really hope I didn't put those guys out of business.